Okay, PCOS. We're going to talk about polycystic ovary syndrome. It seems to be part of this epidemic, especially in younger women, of hormone dysregulation. I am curious on your sort of views in general on PCOS and why we're seeing so much of it.
Yeah, great question. Okay, so PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome. Classically, it's three things. It's kind of irregular periods. Number two, it's high levels of male type hormones, things like testosterone and DHEA. And number three, cysts on the ovaries. I would slightly make the distinction between just having irregular periods and cysts on the ovaries and having the irregular periods and the cysts on the ovaries and the high male hormones, because the cause can be different.
Mhm.
If you just have irregular periods, chances are you will have cysts on the ovaries, because what's happening is that you're not ovulating every cycle. And if you're not ovulating every cycle, that will show up as cysts. So that can happen for many reasons, right? I mean, if we're stressed, if we're over exercising and under eating, our periods can become irregular. And then if we were to do a scan, we may see cysts on the ovaries. But that doesn't require the same treatment quite as polycystic ovarian syndrome. So, just down ovulation is one thing. When we have the high male hormones as part of the picture, then we know something's happening. Those high male hormones are blocking that LH surge, so they're blocking the ovulatory process. Now, why are they high, and what can we do to get them down? And classically, I would say that there are two main causes. One, probably the majority, is what we see as insulin resistance. So people may be a bit overweight, they may have insulin resistance, and that can cause the high male hormones, that can prevent the LH surge from happening, and it can lead to PCOS. And that's kind of the classic one that we hear a lot about. The second type, though, can be more linked to stress. So actually, if we have disruptions in our CRH and our cortisol producing hormones, then that can put us into fight or flight, have higher male hormones ready to fight or flight, and disrupt the LH surge that way. So the two main drivers, if you ask why is it becoming more common, I think that both of these things are becoming more common. In group one, metabolic dysfunction and insulin resistance is becoming more common nowadays, probably because of things like processed foods. Then number two, in the smaller group where stress is driving it, well, I think that could, people would say that that's also becoming more common because of the society we live in. So we've got these two, in a way, PCOS is kind of covering the 2 feet of everything that we're seeing going on with the health epidemic at the moment.
So I hear quite a lot from women who have had scans and they've got no cysts, but they've been given a PCOS, so not post-pill PCOS, which they definitely don't have cysts at that point, do they? It's just been sort of lumped in as called PCOS, and it's sort of not really. But very commonly they haven't even had cysts, and they've been given a diagnosis of PCOS. So I think that we're seeing just a lot of general hormone dysregulation being given this categorization and diagnosis of PCOS, and it might not be. It might just be high stress, imbalance of hormones, but just for the sake of the diagnosis, it's being given this name.
And again, I think this comes back to the fact that as we move from a system that used diagnosis and then one drug for one diagnosis, and we now enter a world whereby we are going to find the actual biochemical and molecular imbalances and hopefully treat the specific pathways that need treating, maybe multiple pathways at the same time.
Mm.
That's why the confusion, right? Because that's old paradigm to try to put one diagnosis. In fact, it could be a multitude of imbalances that are causing it. And this is very important for treatment, right? So of course, if somebody's let's say PCOS, genuine PCOS, high male hormones, all the features, high male hormones, they're not ovulating, they're having irregular periods, and they've got cysts on the ovaries. If that's being driven by insulin resistance, the way you're going to treat that is going to be treating the insulin resistance. with your supplements, with your medications, with your lifestyle, you're going to be, yeah, that's one way. And then, of course, if it's being driven by stress, it's a completely different treatment path. So it is
Yes.
important to, as the practitioners, I think, to really just look and write down what is going on. You know,
Mm.
what are the actual biochemical imbalances that you're seeing, and then be addressing those, trying to work out what is the driver and actually addressing those.
Yeah, which is, I think, for our coaches, the way that we teach our triangle of hormonal health, and the foundation piece of that for whatever we see, the first thing we look at is someone's diet sheet and look at blood sugar instability, because until we get that piece of the puzzle sorted and actually get people's blood sugars really balanced, high protein, lower carb diets, really starting to strip out the junk, then nothing else becomes clear. We don't know if it's a stress profile. We don't know if it's a classic hormone profile, or actually if it was just diet all along causing, a lot of the hormonal fallout. So I love hearing that.
Although if
I think,
someone's, if some, you know, if a patient's kind of reading that themselves and they've been kind of more in the female athlete triad, right? Over exercising, under
yeah,
eating, the last thing, if they get told they have a scan and they see cysts on their, and someone sees cysts on their ovaries, and that person goes away and reads and thinks, oh, I need to be on a low carb diet, it's going to make it worse because they're already in energy deficiency syndrome. So this is why these distinctions that you and I are talking about are so important, right? Because for them, they don't have the PCOS type that needs to be treated in the way that would address insulin resistance driven PCOS. They actually have an energy deficiency syndrome that's stopping them from ovulating, that's therefore causing cysts on the ovaries.
mm, yes, so absolutely. Then looking at the amount that they're eating in terms of macronutrient density and macronutrient balance is essential. Because I also know that often in the athletic world, they do start piling in they really focus on carbs. I heard from one pro footballer that he worked for a famous football club, and he had been there for about 3 weeks, and the nutritionists were taking a look at what he was eating and said, no, 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 you're still under your calories. I want you to eat a bag of Haribo a day. And he is now sort of like, pro carnivore and all those kind of things, going, I just look back on what they were getting me to eat because they were trying to get me to up my energy, and there was no nutritional density in it. It was just energy for energy's sake, and that can then have huge fallout in the body. So I completely agree with you. It's got to be that whole picture, hasn't it, of nutrient density, macronutrient balance, making sure it's hormone stabilizing. Love it. I love it. Yeah, I'm fascinated by PCOS because it seemed to be quite a rare thing. And my daughter is 21. She's given full permission for me to share this, but she was dairy intolerant as a baby. So she was weaned straight away after breastfeeding. She got very poorly. And so we weaned her after we realized it was milk onto soy because that was the only option. And then of course as a child and all of those formative years, every pudding she had, it was the soy version. And she started early puberty at sort of 7 with the hair growth under her arms, and, bleeds by, I think she was about 10, and has always struggled with weight. Then the chin hair came, and the period problems and sleep issues. Never had her actually fully diagnosed, never gone down that route. But I'm like, that's just such classic PCOS problems because of this, huge input of estrogens, probably from a child, and also probably inheriting some of my hormone issues. So, and I thought, oh my gosh, my poor child. But then she went off to university, and out of the, however many, 6 or 8 of it is it in the halls of residence, all of them, some chronic issue, hormonal issue. Absolutely terrifying. Actually, I think it's terrifying.
Mm. Yeah, an epidemic of hormone dysregulation. Yeah.
Epidemic, epidemic.